Christian home. I grew up going to private schools, learning about Jesus and all that stuff. And like my faith was never really mine. I spent a lot of time in like elementary, middle school, getting bullied a lot. Like that's really what was going on with me. Like I got bullied a bunch to the point where I ended up just hating absolutely everybody around me. Even if it wasn't anyone that had ever done anything wrong to me, I just hated them because I got bullied so much. And the result of this was that I decided to make like a mask, I guess, like a fake personality that it was who I pretended to be whenever I was around anyone, but it wasn't really me. And I I was smart enough to know not to just let my personality be completely defined by the people around me, because someone would notice I'd get exposed as a fake and bullied even more. So I let a few parts of my personality shine through, and so there was a little bit of the real me and a lot of the fake me, and it would end up just as a believable mask. And like since I was so angry, since I hated everybody around me, like I got really into secular hardcore. I was really into the angry, hate-driven side of the genre, and that's the part that I let shine through the mask. So whenever someone would look at me, they would just see this really like good Christian kid that listened to angry music. And that was the personality that I had invented for myself, and that's who I was to everybody around me from probably fifth grade till about eighth grade. Then in eighth grade, like I had a confirmation class with a pastor that I really didn't get along with. Like I'm not going to use his name just because he is a pastor, and that deserves some respect, I guess. But so me and this pastor didn't get along at all. He yelled, screamed, all kinds of stuff if I messed up the memory work. We really didn't get along at all, and it was not a good time, and by no means did he show me the love of God. And as a result, I just began to think that Christians were just naturally hypocrites, even though I still said I was one for the sake of wearing my mask. I was very bitter towards God after this class, and I ultimately like lost what little faith I had during this class. And this was in eighth grade, and as part of just assuming that all Christians were hypocrites, I started listening to some of the Christian side of metal genre. Like I got really into Demon Hunter. Thought that was like the big band that I listened to for most of eighth grade. Because in my mind, like Christians were hypocrites, so even though they try and promote God through this music, like, they're just as fake as all the rest of the Christians, and the music will be just as hate driven as what I'm used to listening to. And looking back on it, obviously that's not true at all. But that was my like reasoning behind actually listening to Christian music when I didn't want anything to do with God. And then I actually went to a Demon Hunter concert that summer. It was Demon Hunter, O Sleeper, Living Sacrifice, Famine, and Advent. I think they played in that order, but that was all the bands on the lineup. And while I was at that show, it really started getting to me. Like they were so blatantly different. Like they obviously had something that I didn't have. That I began to question what it was they had that I didn't, and what made them so different from all the pastors and teachers that I had written off as hypocrites. And really, like that was a question that I struggled with for a while. And then after my freshman year, I looked into the apologetics, like how Christians logically defend their faith. I examined a little bit of other similar religions, like I looked into a little bit of Islam. I looked into like Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I examined some other religions, and I examined Christians and how they defend their faith. And I accepted God based on logic. Like I accepted him completely logically, like as like he was. Like I didn't view him as a person. I viewed him as a concept that is a reasonable explanation for all of existence, and that's really what God was to me, was just this abstract being Like, he was the reason everything existed. He was the creator and all that stuff. The Bible was valid. Like, it was reliable. That was the conclusions I'd come to logically. And it wasn't until sophomore year, like, there was a lot of people at my high school. I ignored it for the most part my freshman year, but like, sophomore year, I started noticing that the Christians, like, there was a lot of them that still seemed like they had something I didn't have. And that really was bugging me, because I had accepted God, even though I only accepted him logically. Like, I had accepted God, so there was no reason for them to be any different than me, but they were. And then one of those guys that has been a huge influence, like, I never got real close to him. His name was Kevin Hain. Like, I didn't talk to him a whole lot. He would have never known that he was someone I looked up to, but he was one of those guys that obviously had something I didn't have. And he died in a rock climbing accident. And I was part of the worship band that played at his funeral. And because of since I was like on the inside there, since I was at like the worship band practices and talking to like his best friend, I saw God do some pretty awesome stuff through this death. Like, Kevin had made a video that I'll probably post during testimony week here. I'll probably post it at some point. He'd made this video, and following his death, this video got played like everywhere. It got huge exposure, and this video was like Kevin's testimony. And like, people all over the world were watching this video, and I just saw God do crazy awesome stuff through this death. And that's really when I'm started to be like, okay, there's got to be something more to God than just this logical thing. If like, he can use a death of an 18-year-old kid to start bringing 22,000 people to know him, then like, there's got to be something more than just this logical conclusion I've come to. And then later that summer, I was at Scream the Prayer Tour 2, where Sleeping Giant was playing, one of the headliners. And it was during their set that I really experienced the presence of God for the first time. It was while I was at that show that the Holy Spirit really started moving in me, and I accepted God into my heart that day. Like, it's when I truly laid my life down and was like, all right, God, you've got it all. And at that point, like, that was really when my hate disappeared, was at that Sleeping Giant show. Like, I'd accepted God logically and all this stuff, but that hatred that I had hidden under this mask since 5th grade, that was still there, and I was still hiding it. Like, that was still who I was. I was still putting on the show of being the good Christian kid that liked people. But deep down, like, I really just hated everybody around me. So, at this show was where God took away that hatred. Like, I walked out of that venue, like, and for like the first time since like second, third grade probably, I felt genuinely happy, and I genuinely felt like I could smile, and it wouldn't be a fake smile that I put on for someone else to make them think that I was okay. And like, that's really my story for the most part, was just that God took that anger and took that hatred. Like, there's been some other crazy stuff that's happened along the way. Like, I don't even have time to talk about all the awesome stuff that he does. Like, I've seen him. I was there when, Tim talked about his little brother getting cured of arthritis. Like, I was there when that happened. I was there when the blind kid got his sight back, like, when God healed that. So I've seen awesome stuff like this. I've witnessed his power in many different ways, but none of it will really be as personal or as real to me. Like, I've seen crazy stuff, but none of it will ever hit me as deep as when God took away the hatred that I'd held on to for years. It wasn't until I'd surrendered that to him and his love came into me that I was free from that hatred. And that's really, like, especially in the metal scene, like, there's a lot of hatred. Even if people don't want to admit it, there's a lot of hatred in the hardcore and metal scenes. And there's just a lot of hatred in general in our world. And I'm living proof that if you're living in hatred, you don't have to anymore. Like, God took away my hatred. He is more than willing to take away your hatred. Like, don't hold on to it and don't just assume that because you have this hatred and no one can change that. Like, because I tried to not be angry at people, but I just couldn't. I was just filled with hate. And when God comes into the picture, when you give your life to Jesus, if you ask him to take that hatred, he'll take it. Like, you weren't created to hate everybody around you. So if you genuinely ask, if you believe in your heart that God can take that hatred from you, he will, because that's exactly what happened with me. Like, I would not be making this video if I was still filled with hatred. I probably wouldn't know Tim, Patrick, or Isaiah like I do if God hadn't come into my life and taken away that hatred. So never feel like you're trapped in something, because God has the power to take everything that you don't want. God has the power to change your life more than you would ever believe.